to the Gameweek 2 preview show. We have a great episode for you today with captaincy, transfer tips, and differentials. So let's dive right into the first segment, which will be captaincy. Okay, so my first captaincy tips is who I'd like to have for this week, not the one that I do have, and it's Aubameyang, and I think it's quite clear-cut. He has a great history against Burnley, and he had been looking really good this preseason. He looked good in the first game. He's just fire. He's probably the best attacker right now in the league because we're not sure if Kane is back to his old self yet, and Aguero is not nailed, it seems. So I think Auba is the main man here, and that's my pick. But I don't have him. I have, though, Ras and Salah. So that's the decision for me, and I really think it's a coin toss between them, but I'm currently on Ras.
Okay. I feel like it's slim pickings this week. It's tough with City playing Spurs, Chelsea playing Leicester, Liverpool away. The good options are limited. I think, I'd have to echo what you said and say that Aubameyang is probably the best option. Just for the interest of trying to go a different way. If you wanted, it's week 2. No one's far enough behind that you need to be doing ballsy differentials at this point. But if you're that guy that loves a bit of danger and you want to be different, you want to be the guy that walks in on Tuesday morning and it's just like, I captained this guy. He got 3 goals. My out there shout is for Callum Wilson. He scored an assist, which was unlucky not to be a goal. It was a good save, I think it was by Dean Henderson, which meant that it was actually, who was it? I can't remember who tapped it in because I don't care. No one I can say about.
Memphis or something.
Yes, the centre back Metham. Yeah, you're right. But Wilson was very close. He had a good XG for that game, and he did look like he was getting chances. They're playing away at Aston Villa, which is not ideal that they're away, but Aston Villa did concede 31 shots to Tottenham, which is it's got to be something near a record.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now because I couldn't believe it when I heard it earlier. But 31 shots, 7 on target, so there weren't as many on target, but they were very susceptible to Spurs getting in behind and shooting. And if Callum Wilson has his boots on, he could fill them against that defence. They want to get a win after what they would consider to be a poor opening day result, especially letting in a goal late. So here's my shout for an outsider. Again, realistically, I'm going to take a safer option. I also have the decision between Salah and Sterling. Very marginally landing on the side of Salah just due to the fact that I think they're playing weaker opposition who looked average at best against Burnley. And, when was the last time Burnley's... Well, I say that. I shouldn't say stuff like that because someone will tell me it was in their last game. But Burnley don't often... They're not renowned for running in 3 goals a game. And they were cutting through Southampton like a hot knife through butter. So I'm backing the Liverpool boys to do the same. Salah to be the man.
Yeah. I guess I'm sort of probably going to say a lot of the same stuff like you've been saying. I can add to the Callum Wilson thing. I see Fantasy Football Fix have predicted him to return like 4.2 points. So it's not the dumbest one if you really want to go for a differential. But yeah, echoing you guys, Sterling, Salah, or Aubameyang. That's like the 3 go-getters. For me, I think it is a toss-up between Sterling and Aubameyang, because both of those look, I would say, more clinical and more on fire than Salah, because I guess I have a real skeptic eye for Salah, because he always has this tendency to shoot, and he has a way of getting stats for him, expected this, expected that, way up high, and not always giving the returns that is predicted for him. And Sterling looks even better this year. It's like, how can he get better? And he gets better. And then you have City as well, looking even better. So I guess that's because of Kevin De Bruyne. So overall, I would maybe for both say overall for Sterling, and on my part, since I don't have Aubameyang, Sterling.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting with the Ras versus Salah debate that it's almost like they have so much going for them, both of them. So it's hard to find like a counter argument. Okay, fine, Salah had a couple of minutes in midweek, but other than that, it's just like good arguments that they are both really good options. And that's why it might be the deciding factor that he had.
Yeah, I guess you can debate the fact that Salah had 120 minutes plus a run up to a penalty yesterday, and Sterling has been doing training this week. That's about it. And they're playing at home. Salah is playing away. And who knows what Southampton will be this time after that kind of loss. They're playing home for the first time this season, might want to show that they don't really, or like their fans, that I won't be like that all the time against. So yeah, it's hard to know. This part of the season is pretty much, I don't know.
Yeah. Cool. So let's go to next segment. Transfer tips. I'm going to start off with saying that not many transfers that I'd like to do right now. I thought about it, and the guy that I came up with that I wouldn't like in my team right now is probably Lacazette after not starting the game. Okay, he might start the next game, who knows? But long term, it seems really risky to go for Lacazette when he might play like 60 or 70% of the games like he did last season. I thought that was going to stop this season because he's been always good in my eyes, and I think they always look better with Aubameyang, but and Lacazette on the same pitch at the same time. But Emery disagrees, and also I want to just talk about Pepe and Pulisic. If you have them, I wouldn't despair. I don't think it would be like a good thing to start with them because, yeah, they weren't obvious to start the first game week, and they didn't. But I think if you have any of them, I think I would have patience because for every game week, it's more and more likely that they'll start. Pulisic had a great European Super Cup League game, and Pepe is just quality, and I think he's needed in that game. We talked about it in the last episode. You said it, Sam, that if they're going to break Burnley down, probably Pepe is the best man for that. So I think he's pretty likely to get game time, but we still said he might be on the bench too. But I just have a feeling that he will do something either from the bench or not. But going to the two guys that I certainly like considering myself to bring in, but I think I'm not going to do it. But it's Martial, and the reason why is because he's too expensive for a straight swap for Fraser now. So he might have to be included in a double or triple move next week. And the other guy is Mané. And the reason I'm probably not going for Mané is because Salah is still a good pick. And, well, we don't know if Mané is going to start. He's just come back, and his first start was yesterday. So I'm not sure if he's going to start, basically. But those two are the guys that I really want right now in my team anyway.
Yeah, just on the note you mentioned about Pepe, I just remember seeing Emery actually did talk about him earlier today. It doesn't give too much insight, but just in the interests of filling in a bit of the gaps here, he got asked today whether Pepe would start. He said, "I'm going to decide tomorrow. It depends how they will be tomorrow in training. Pepe's training with us, improving with us, knowing us. He's close to helping us at the beginning of the match. So, I mean, I don't think you can really make any bold assumptions off that, but just just for information, I thought I would slot that in as I remember seeing it earlier. I'm gonna speak about a couple of the transfers that are the most kind of popular transfers in this week, and just either endorse or caution against them. The first one I was going to mention was Tony Martial. I just think you're going to get value from him going forward. Looks like he's going to be settled in that number 9 role. 7.5 million. I know he's taken a small price rise. 7.5 million. That's an absolute no-brainer for me for a guy playing out of position in the top 6 side that we expect to get a few goals this season. I won't go into too much more detail because I know Oscar's covered it. Guy I'd warn against perhaps is Divock Origi. He's been transferred in by 169,000 people. Obviously had a great game. Scored and got an assist, I believe it was. Finished on 12 points. But with Mane coming back in the Super Cup and getting 2 goals, whilst I wouldn't be surprised to see Origi give him the nod this weekend with Mane playing all that time, I think if he does play this weekend, this is probably his last start, barring injuries going forward. I think Mane will be back at the very latest for the Arsenal game. If not, he could even start this weekend. One more that I like, which might be a little bit under the radar. Well, I say under the radar. He has been transferred in by 126,000 people, but it's one I haven't heard that popping up too many times in kind of Twitter this week, which is John McGinn from Aston Villa. A few people have kind of got that problem guy they had to fill their midfield out with at sort of 6 million or 5.5 million. For example, I have Trossard from Brighton, although I'm not moving him on. I know that's a spot with people like Barkley or Callum Robinson or Norwood that people just had to fill in. And if you need a sideways transfer this week in your early wildcard, and I think this is a guy to look at. He was great in the Championship last year. He got 7 goals and 9 assists in 43 games. Does love a yellow card. Got 14 yellow cards, but he showed his attacking involvement again against Spurs. Obviously, Danny Rose did lose his footing, but I'm not sure he would have got back to cover him anyway. It was a really nice run in behind and a nice finish, and I think he's going to kind of get you those returns from midfield. The other reason I kind of bring him up is because if you look at Aston Villa's upcoming 4 games, obviously we know they play Bournemouth at home this weekend, who aren't notoriously great at keeping clean sheets. Following that, Everton at home, who are definitely a lot better at home than they are away, so there's a chance for returns there. And his 2 games after that are Palace away and West Ham at home. So it's a really nice clean run of fixtures for the next 4. If you are sort of struggling with that spot, or alternatively, if you are looking at making a kind of a structural change to your team and you've got a 7.5 million, 8 million midfielder that you want to downgrade so you can get in a Harry Kane or get in a Sterling if you don't have him, McGinn might be a nice little option to downgrade to. I personally wouldn't advocate a transfer hit this week, but I was fortunate enough to have a pretty positive start and rack up kind of 84, 85 points. So if you really think you've gone all wrong, then he might be the answer in terms of a little structural switch for you. But yeah, here's my shout for this week if you need a transfer.
Yeah. It's always rough who I want, or the answer really is I want Aubameyang, but that's not gonna happen in a while. I can't find a way to put him in.
And he's only good for 1 game week, maybe 1.5, if you think the Spurs game is good.
Yeah. But like who I would steer away from right now, I think is Everton. I think they looked weird and they struggled to break down Crystal Palace. So I would even steer away from them now. I stayed away from them before the season and will steer away from them now as well. So that's my steer away from, and who I really want in is Aubameyang, and Mane is Mane is Mane. I know I love him and I always advocate him, and also Yeah, I think the rest of them are more like differential picks again, but I guess we're going back to that one day. Yeah. So I'll come back to them because my obvious ones are Aubameyang and Mane, maybe Kane. It's like that's the ones, the players I want.
Okay.
So
So
I struggle to every time I look at my team. It's like, how can I fit in Aubameyang?
it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So since you want to talk about differentials, let's go for it. I had a tough time finding like guys around 5% that I want. Actually, it was like, okay, Pulisic is at 8, and most of the guys that I thought were differentials are actually around 10, 11%. But so the guy I found and who I like is Pukki. Talked about him in our last show. He looked like class, and I was surprised because I didn't think he was going to be this good. And I thought that championship might be too big of a step, and he was like a monitor for me, and he still is. But he really did look great and had great ball handling. He was clinical. So apart from that, I've seen the Pedro name been flying around on their official site, and I'm just not convinced. He looks good, and he's like good at firing shots that don't go in, like just barely outside. And yeah, I experienced that quite a lot in the beginning of the last season, where he started to fire early on, but he was not consistent enough in both returns and in starts. So I think he's probably trouble going forward. I'd like to hear your opinion on that later on if we have time for that, Yogi. But first, Sam, which differentials have you found?
So there's a couple of names I've looked at, and another one I'll probably be asking for Yogi's input on. Actually, this guy is someone I've become less keen on based on last night, not because of his performance, but because I don't know what his confidence is like as a player. The guy I was definitely going to bring up was Tammy Abraham, because I thought he was lively against United. He faded out of the game a little bit, but certainly the first half he was explosive. He seemed to link up quite well with the kind of the three guys playing behind, like just behind him. Obviously struck the post early on, and yeah, I was just impressed by him. I really didn't know if he was going to be able to adapt to a game of that kind of magnitude immediately at the start of his Premier League career, but I thought he was good. Yeah, there's still a question about who's going to really fill that number 9 role going forward. I think being a game against United, you can assume that's definitely Lampard started the team he would have wanted to start. He wasn't. I wouldn't have thought he was experimenting. But whether I don't really like talking about this kind of stuff because this is meant to be a fun podcast. But like I know that Abraham's kind of faced a bit of like racist abuse on Twitter and post this missing this penalty last night, and I don't know if that will kind of really get to him. I'd like to think not, but there's definitely a chance that it could because it's a terrible thing to have to deal with. So he's still worth consideration. The guy I'm actually going to talk about in a bit more detail, and so apologies if you've watched any FPL podcast in the last 2 weeks, you've probably already heard this name, but in case you haven't, I feel like it's one that needs to be brought up. And it's Martin Montoya, who is or was a right back for Brighton, who appears this year to be some sort of right mid winger hybrid. Just having a look at his, I initially noticed this on Match of the Day, having been so deep in my FPL planning. By the time his name started getting brought up, I just sort of zoned out and ignored it. But when I watched Match of the Day and the first time I heard his name, he was basically standing by the opposition's corner flag. I was like, oh, okay, so maybe the hype is kind of real on this guy. It looked like he was getting in those positions. it would appear for all intents and purposes that he started as on the right side of the midfield, kind of 4, and his heat map and touch map seem to kind of validate that too. He's at 0.7% of teams, which is one of those weird ones again where when you're kind of involved in the FPL Twitter sphere, so to speak, it feels like he's in about 30% of teams, but actually, obviously, it maybe doesn't go further than the people that spend their whole life devoted to it. So it only, turns up in a few teams in the end of the day. But again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of call for kind of maybe debating the structure of your team early on. I, for example, have gone for 4 big guys at the back, which means I only managed to get Salah and Sterling as my 2 kind of premium guys. If in a couple of weeks' time it looks like I've made a mistake and Kane is just someone I'm going to have to get in, he's a great guy. Could fill in to replace like one of my heavy hitting defenders, which would immediately free up a couple of million. And it looks like he's going to play. He's going to play in an advanced role where, he's probably not going to set the world on fire, but if he just chips in with a couple of assists and gets a steady clean sheets for 4.5 million, he's gonna pay that value back. So yeah, I'm going for the defensive shout today, and Martin Montoya is my differential.
So I've compiled a little list of people just looking at the players that had low ownership. And I'm actually going for some that's a little stretch as well. The one that is like a little stretch, and if he plays regularly, that is Christian Eriksen. Because, like I mentioned in the last video, Spurs looked like 2 different teams with and without him. And if Eriksen consistently plays and Kane goes boom, then you will get like sort of like we expect from Kevin De Bruyne this season. You get that steady point haul all the time, or not like the big point, but you just get a steady flow of point all the time with maybe an assist every now and then, maybe a goal every now and then, and that's enough to give you net you a lot of points. So he's in that list. Emerson, which I've seen a lot of people flag right now because he sort of gives you a little Alonso vibe that he keeps running up on the left side, keeps doing shots. He was supposed to score that 1 goal against United. It's like, how do you miss that? And he looked the same against Liverpool, maybe a little bit poorer there, but he really is attacking and he likes running up that left side. And left side has usually been the strongest side for Chelsea, and it doesn't seem that bad now either, because Pulisic has a lot of confidence out there and does a lot of interesting link-ups, which brings me over to him as well. Because from Gameweek 3 and on, Chelsea have a bunch of tasty fixtures, and I know I talk a lot about Chelsea, but I think they have been written off a lot, and what they have demonstrated now in 2 matches, despite not winning, is that they're maybe not as bad as people feared in the beginning. Holding up against a Liverpool A team, I would say, is quite impressive for a bunch of young guys running around there. Also, like Oscar mentioned, Timo Pukki is on that list, 5.3%. And if you manage to score against Liverpool, then I guess you managed to score against pretty much everyone. You should be, at least. And you get quite a big confidence boost, as like if you start to look at athletes' mentality. When you think to yourself, I managed to score against the greatest side in the Premier League almost, and yeah, that makes you feel invincible, sort of. So I guess it will be interesting to watch if he keeps on banging in. And then you also can talk about Luke Shaw, because I think it looks interesting because he keeps being on the edge of the box, and he looks like the one United defender that's furthest up on the field. I know Wan-Bissaka likes to cross in, but Luke Shaw is even further up, in my opinion. So that's my little list of
So
That's that.
that's that. We've gone through all the topics and come up to half an hour of footage. So I think we're going to leave it there and start tinkering for ourselves a little bit. And I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us. Take care.